Hideo Kojima is possibly video gaming's best known auteur, and whatever you think of him, whether he's a creative genius or a nonsense peddler, a visionary innovator or frustrated film director, a food pervert or regular pervert, one thing is indisputable. He's off his nut, and smuggled in amongst all of his groundbreaking works are a long list of daft ideas that he somehow managed to get past the ostensibly sensible people who were supposed to keep a leash on him, until they fired him. Allegedly. Or he got sick of them and left. Allegedly. Look, he was the guy who made Konami's best stuff, right? And they either let him walk or they pushed him out. Either way, not very sensible at all, as it turns out. But that left him free and unfettered to make the daftest thing of all, which is post-apocalyptic paranormal postie simulator Death Stranding, starring your man from Walking Dead, your man from Late Night, and your man from Jeff Keighley, which leads us, in celebration of his boundless genius, to this year list of completely stupid things that Kojima got into a shipped game. And frankly, they're all news to me, because my boss thought it would be funny to make me make this video, because he knows I've bounced right off every Kojima game I've ever tried to play. Jim keeps going on about Oblivion and Assassin's Creed and all that. Let's make him write about something that he's got absolutely no idea about. Number one, dude shitting. Everybody does it, okay? Everybody poops, but Kojima's got some kind of weird fixation on it, and I do mean a fixation. This particular stink kink goes all the way back to 1994's Police Knots, an acclaimed cyber-noir visual novel with a serious story about time displacement and organ trafficking, in which you, as the player character Johnny, can drink too much milk during a dinner scene at the start of Act 2 and spend much of the rest of the game suffering from diarrhea. Okay, that's funny. That's pretty funny, unless you're lactose intolerant, I guess, in which case it's still pretty funny, but directly at your expense. But Kojima doesn't stop there. In an apparent throwback to Police Knots, the Metal Gear Solid series is full of guys named Johnny who keep cacking their pantaloons. A lot of this crap is given mechanical justification within the game. Making guards themselves via various means obviously works as an effective distraction while you're sneaking around. In Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, it's possible to find a cassette recording of a man loudly defecating for an uncomfortable length of time. As well as being a reference to Kojima's long-running IBS joke, this too has a mechanical purpose in that you can play the recording while hiding in a portaloo to discourage passing guards from checking on you. Why did someone tape themselves doing a big skitty jobby on a military base? I'm sure there's a lengthy in-lore explanation, but I haven't found one. But for fans of dudes spending way too much time in the can, Death Stranding includes a baffling mechanic where you craft grenades out of Norman Reedus' shit. A mechanic that involves watching him curl one out in the premiere inn he gets to stay in between deliveries. How is that real? And it's made worse by the fact that he looks like a guy who hunts and kills a lot of his own meat. Number 2, dude's p***ing. The pea mushrooms. We all know about the pea mushrooms, but again, Death Stranding's implementation of this particular body fixation of Kojima's has a long history involving many Metal Gear Solid characters wetting themselves or having catheters fitted for various and barely justifiable reasons. But seeing as how I can't spend this entire video talking about poo-poos and wee-wees, and it would be funny, let's face it, but I would really like to move on. For the love of God, let's move on. Number 3, cockpits. The mechs in Zone of the Enders, called orbital frames, are advanced humanoid combat suits that incorporate some design elements from real-world jet fighters. Nothing wrong with that. This is an established trope visible everywhere, from Robotech to Transformers to Lego Ninjago, or as it's pronounced in the Cotswolds, Ninjago. What sets Zone of the Enders apart is an elaborate and persistent visual pun where the cockpits are cocks. 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 My auto cue won't move to it. Cocks. Move. Cocks. Thank you. Supposedly, the in-universe reason for this is to keep the human occupants of orbital frames as close to the machine's centre of gravity as possible, so they're less affected by G-forces when pulling off cool moves or whatever. But obviously the real reason is that someone found it funny to have mechs with big silver erections, regardless of what is or isn't getting pulled off. And in fairness, they're right. It is funny. I've got no notes. Number 4, incessant codec calls. I know this is sacrilege in some circles, but Metal Gear Solid's reliance on codec calls to impart reams and reams of exposition, often interrupting the player to do so for minutes at a time, is, and this is a hill I will die on, crap. I know that Kojima is a genius and his work on building video games into a bold narrative force is invaluable. I won't deny it. Without Metal Gear Solid, you don't get Assassin's Creed or Splinter Cell or any number of smart, story-driven action sagas of the 21st century, but the codec calls are, paradoxically, one of the worst storytelling devices in the history of the medium. They're long, they're boring, they're visually uninteresting and therefore cheap, and they often just kill the pacing of what is fundamentally an interactive hobby. Games writer Steve Burns said it best in an article about MGS2 on Vice about 3,000 years ago.
I mean, it is particularly galling to have the main character's girlfriend calling you up all the time to bemoan your relationship and demand a 20-minute conversation about all squared. That's not just her either, that's everyone. There are so many callbacks and in-jokes and useless information in this stuff that it's like sitting on Wikipedia and pressing the random article button for 12 hours straight. What's the point? Get on with it.
Now, Burns is a prick, but he's right. Number 5, Solar Hell. One of Kojima's party tricks is devising ways to interact with his games beyond the confines of the screen. The most celebrated example being the Psycho Mantis boss fight, in which players are taunted based on their playstyle and the contents of their memory card in an unsettling display of fourth wall breaking shenanigans, and requiring you to physically change controller ports in order to neutralise his psychic abilities. Or the infamous MGS3 fight with The End, who can be beaten in a number of fiddly and annoying ways, or you can just set your console clock to 2 weeks in the future and have him die of old age. But these ideas aren't always very well thought out. Consider Boktai The Sun Is In Your Hand, the Game Boy Advance vampire stealth action game which was designed with the noble goal of making gamers go outside with the inclusion of a gameplay critical UV light sensor. It makes sense, right? Vampires die in sunlight, so allow the player to use real sunlight to defeat vampire bosses. Except this mechanic was unforgivably at the mercy of the player's location and local weather, and you can forget playing the game under your duvet at night, which is the optimum handheld scenario according to me, Jim Trinka. It was also subject to hardware failure. The plastic cover on the solar sensor can fog up over time, making the game unplayable unless you take drastic measures like drilling a hole into it or simply playing something else. Couple that with the fact that the game launched in North America during the autumn and you have a recipe for one of the most frustrating gameplay experiences of the early 2000s. Number 6, Death Stranding. All of it. Even Death Stranding's most die-hard proponents have to admit that it's a difficult sell. TV actor Norman Reedus traverses a barren North America as a postman for the biblical end times, except it looks more like rural Ireland than America, and the whole gaff is full of undead horrors and terrorists that you have to either avoid or engage with some mediocre third-person shooting, all the while comforting a crying baby that is also your ghost radar. And Jeff Keighley's in it for some reason. It's all about rebuilding America, logistically and emotionally, by establishing vital connections between disparate settlements and working passively with other players to build road infrastructure and other means of conquering a harsh and hostile landscape. And there's a load of Metal Gear Solid style bollocks going on, featuring big name actors, product placement, toilet humour. It's a fascinating and multifaceted game that is deliberately designed to be arduous in order to make players feel the thematic weight of bringing a civilization back from the brink of chaos. And from any angle you look at it, it is an incredible piece of interactive storytelling. It's bold, it's brave, it's brilliant, and yet it being designed to be arduous has the unfortunate consequence of it being arduous. Like Metal Gear Solid at its worst, it is a horror show of terrible pacing and overwrought, indulgent writing that takes a lot of commitment to love. And yet, one of the climactic battles of this moody and contemplative postman simulator turns the game into a Street Fighter round in a puddle of mud, complete with 2D fighting controls and arcade-style health bars, which is hilarious, and I personally like to think that the 40 or so hours of glacial bewilderment leading up to it is actually just an elaborate setup to this punchline, that at the end of the day, regardless of the sophisticated artistic ambitions that video games have accumulated over the decades, largely in thanks to Kojima, they are still at their most exciting when you're hammering buttons to punch out of someone. Video games are kinda stupid. And I think Kojima understands this more than anyone, which is why his work is enduring and endearing, and how one of the most popular Game of the Year contenders of 2025 is a sequel to the most boring game ever made.